Scratch Kansas City off the road tour. The Last of Us, episode 5. All right, I'm gonna kind of jump to the end here. This is the one that I am the least impressed with out of the episodes that we've had so far. And it's not because it's bad. It's not. It's still quite good. And if this was an episode of any show other than this one, which has had a much stronger run up until this one, I'd probably be pretty happy with it. But it feels like a step down in a number of ways. The first is this feels like by far the most predictable episode. And I had to actually think about why that was, because there wasn't that much that wasn't predictable in the first two episodes. The third one, it definitely did a couple of instances of zigging when I thought it would zag, like in the best way. But something about this one, well, I think there's two reasons. Part of it is I wasn't really holding the first two episodes to a standard of predictability because I played those bits of the game. And since then, we've been outside of the scope of what I'd actually played when I tried to play the game before my motion sickness kicked in. So I wasn't even really measuring those first two by predictability. But even beyond that, I think there's something else too, which is that the first two are establishing the overall tone. It's giving you a sense of like, okay, yes, they're going to try and sneak through this building. Obviously, the infected are going to notice them. Obviously, we're going to have a chase. It's not that shocking that Tess got infected and died. None of that is super shocking, but it is setting tone and expectations. It's early enough that it still has meaning, that even though it's maybe not surprising given the genre, it's telling you what the base level of bleak will be. Now that that level is established, stories that just kind of hit the same level and play out in a similarly predictable way but aren't establishing as much baseline stuff or new stuff really don't carry as much weight and don't land quite as well. And I think that's part of what's going on here. Now, again, it's well told. Henry is very well acted. Sam, I mean, this is going to sound snarky, but it's very smart that he's deaf, because for what that child actor has to carry, it's going to be a lot easier for them to project that without lines, because no matter how good the child actor is at the age that Sam's supposed to be, that's almost impossible to get that kind of performance out of them. But if you take away the lines and just have it be looks, you can get the right look out of that kid. It's usually the line delivery that fails them. So having the kid be deaf, very smart for what they're doing with it. And it also kind of brings back the way that Ellie bonds with him, that idea that I brought up before of there is still ways to find beauty and fun and reasons to care in this world. And watching her so easily bond with Sam is a reiteration of that. And that is a thing worth reiterating. We get a bit more with Kathleen, and finding out her motivation in regards to the death of her brother was not super exciting, but was kind of interesting in that, you know, she's this obsessed for completely personal reasons. And it has nothing to do with the greater good. The way she talked about Henry in the previous episode, you'd think Henry was an active threat to these people. He's not. He's trying to leave. This is completely personal for her. I also appreciate that she kind of recognizes that she says, yeah, he would have told me to not do this, but I'm going to anyway. She recognizes that she's doing this for herself and not to honor his memory or anything like that. She's going against what he would want. But what he want got him killed. So I appreciate just the right level of self-reflection for her as a character. And she remains terrifying in her ordinariness. Even as she's ordering people killed, she just feels like a slightly irritable customer at the checkout at a grocery store. That's what she feels like. And that works. That works really well. The way the flashback worked in this was really interesting, that we get a flashback to only like 10 days before, because the flashbacks before that had been significantly further back. Here, it's just a little bit. This is how quick everything can change and everything can fall apart. And understand, it fell apart from an already fallen apart system. And this is kind of emphasizing that, yes, the authorities in charge are terrible. Would the people who have the ability and the drive to overthrow them be better? Now, that's going to be a careful line to ride, because if the answer is always no, they're just a different kind of terrible, that's when this risks getting overly bleak. But then again, that's why the reminders of things like Ellie connecting with Sam are so important, because otherwise this thing would just be a depression fest and I might have to bow out. But the overall progression of this, kind of starting to trust Sam, some bonding moments, they get caught on their way out, big thing. I knew as soon as we saw the infected trying to pull Sam and Henry from under that truck, I'm thinking to myself, the infected don't think enough that they would be trying to go out of their way to drag them all the way out from under the truck before they bit them. They're going to bite them under there. Did neither of them really get bitten? And then we saw that Sam did. And actually, I called that in advance when he started talking about fear. And the instant he asked about the monsters, or no, even before that, I thought, because he asked the question, are you still you if you turn into a monster? What I thought he was going to say was, I'm scared of this bite, or, write down, not say. So I'm scared of this bite that I got, which is effectively what he did. I appreciate that Ellie tried something that made sense to her mind. It was never going to work. It was a stupid idea, but I get why it made sense to her. But it's pretty predictable. And the fact that Henry also died, I wouldn't necessarily have called by the means that he did, but I figured they both can't live. Like, the point of the story is these two traveling alone. Narratively, I think it would have gone better for them to have Henry and Sam around a little bit longer. But then again, doing that might have made Sam's eventual death feel crueler than it is, where I guess I'll give it that. I actually can be very, very touchy about child character deaths, because oftentimes they come across as needless and cruel to me. This didn't. So I guess it's a better handled child death, as odd a sentence as that is. The other thing that kind of brought this one down for me, though, was this is the first one that had elements that made me go, oh, that's a video game moment. Holy cow. Because the thing is, once we were past the first two episodes, which again, I could relate to actual bits of the game I played. Once we were past that, I've been watching the last couple episodes and thinking to myself, this just reads like a really well-constructed TV show. You would not necessarily know that this was based on a video game. But then when the big tanky looking infected thing hauls out with this big, stomping the ground, big muscular thing, that was such a video game moment. And I'm sure for people who actually played further into the game than I did, it was like a nice sort of fan moment or whatever. But like for me, all right, let me put it this way. If this was not based off a video game, my reaction would have been, oh, are you freaking kidding me? Since I know it was based on a video game, my reaction is, oh, look, it's the elite enemy. Wow. Like, I get that it's an aspect of the game that fans probably would have been like, why did we never get to see this if it wasn't there? But it doesn't fit. It's a mini boss moment in a story that up until this point has not felt like it was pulling its cues from a video game, but this moment really stands out as being super video gamey. And it probably doesn't help that the creature is made entirely from CG, so it gives it a look very much of a video game, as well rendered as the effects are. So that doesn't help either. How much crap am I going to get for not liking that moment? Look, without a connection to the game, which I keep stressing I don't really have, that's not a moment I ever would have thought to put in a show like this. No. I don't think it should be there. Again, I'm not saying it necessarily should have been removed. It's not a moment for me. It's a moment for the fans. But like, speaking from the perspective that I have, which is as someone who's aware of the video game origins, but is not a devoted fan of those games and didn't finish the first one, and didn't even try and play the second one. Yeah, no, I think the moment's dumb. I'm sorry. Narratively. I'm sure in a gaming context, the bigger, tougher enemy, it's a big, oh, crap moment. I'm sure your stomach drops out and like it's probably very memorable for lots of people who did play the games. But speaking of someone who didn't, outside of the context of gaming, I'm sorry, it's dumb. It's just dumb. It's dumb and unnecessary. They're already overwhelmed by numbers. What the hell is this thing doing there? Is the perspective that I have as someone who is not attached to the games and never got to the point where we see this thing in the games. That's where I'm at. I don't know what to tell you. But I think also part of the thing is like getting into a situation where ultimately at the end of this, they're leaving Kansas City, just the two of them. They've lost their truck, but otherwise it's like, and we've gone through another cycle of maybe some hope and death. And I'm now a little bit nervous about the series getting overly cyclical. And like this can be a trap for road trip style narratives where we just kind of go through a series of very similar progressions. Oh, here's the situation with this threat. We find some people who maybe we can get related to, but they're either going to die or abandon us, or we have to abandon them so that we can still be alone at the end of this. It's not an unworkable formula, but that's the thing. I feel like formula is not something I want to start feeling like this show has from episode to episode. And I don't think it has shown that it is formulaic yet. But I feel like I now have seen what the formula would be if it becomes formulaic. And we'll see whether or not it goes that way. Last of Us, episode 5. What did you think about it? Whatever your thoughts are, drop something down in the comments. Let's talk about it. Patreon pays the bills and allows me to do this as my living. Even if you can't help me out that way, like, share, subscribe are also big assistance, but don't worry too much about it. We take a relaxed attitude around here, so you can just come on back next time you need a break. And now my thanks to my highest supporters on Patreon. Robin Moore, Zubin Lafula, Tarak, the thing that goes doink in the anime, Oliver B., Melinda Walters, Emu Delkey, Leotha Boyd, Becky Sparks, Fernabilax, the Poodle, Tracy Scrabbit, Angry Casperl, Tim Price, Adam R.D.L. Taylor, Shayla Gourlay, and Rosalind Bennett. Thanks for your support. And if you want to get your name in the credits, check out the rewards on the Patreon. Yeah.